Hello, brothers and sisters. Today's devotional is entitled Love One Another, and that's something that Jesus would say. 2 John 1 and 5 says, I am not writing you a new command, but one we have had from the beginning. I ask that we love one another. Today's world seems to have so much hatred. Hatred between nations is not new. Nations have gone to war and had tensions since time began. Protecting a nation's borders is not new either. Wars have been started over border enforcement or borders being ignored. In my opinion, tensions seem to be at an all-time high in many places around the world. Hatred is running rampant. Today's world seems to have so much hatred. Most recently, around the 2012, the 2016, the 2020 presidential elections, they seem to be getting uglier and uglier and uglier as we go. And the ugliness has gotten uglier if possible. If you voted for Trump or Clinton or Trump or Biden or whomever you voted for in the last several elections, the opposite side immediately thought you were an idiot and hatred spewed forth from their mouth before and after the election, and it still comes in waves. And the candidates for 2016 didn't help any by calling those who supported the other side deplorables or talking about punching one another in the face. And the hatred continues this cycle as well. The rhetoric coming from the mouths and tweets of our leaders on both sides, news bites, maybe that's what they're after, feeds the hatred being experienced today. And 4 years later, and into the week or so of a new administration, it is still going on. One side calls for unity and yet does anything but work toward unity. The other side continues their conspiracy theories and stirs up emotions on both sides. And Jesus said, and John said, quoting Jesus, love one another. Today's world seems to have so much hatred. One year, in the not too distant past, my family went out to dinner at the Melting Pot in Annapolis. It was a celebration dinner for our twin daughters on their birthday. 10 of us gathered and ordered all sorts of foods and all shared pots to cook our meals. Oh, for the day that we can return to that. We had colored pokers to put our meat and other food items on in the cooker pots, and arms and hands were all over the place. It could have caused an issue, but we all figured out a system and got along. All had plenty of food, and a good time was had by all. I mention this sort of nostalgic-wise because we can't do that anymore, but I mention this because it seems like we've had a hard time sharing and getting along in the world and in our nation today. Even with more than enough for every working person to have plenty, there seems to be bickering and hatred. There is a better way. Today's world seems to have so much hatred. In the days of the early church, hatred was running rampant as well. The early Christians were being persecuted by Rome and by the Jews, yet Christ and his disciples talked and wrote about love. Here's today's passage in partial context. 2 John 1, 4-6. It has given me great joy to find some of your children walking in the truth, just as the Father commanded us. And now, dear lady, I am not writing you a new commandment, but one we have had from the beginning. I ask that we love one another. And this is love, that we walk in obedience to his commands. As you have heard from the beginning, his command is that you walk in love. Today's world seems to have so much hatred. Love is walking in obedience to God. Love is loving one another, even if we differ in opinion. We don't have to agree to love one another. We don't have to have the same theology to love one another. Love is caring for one another as Christ cared for us. It doesn't mean we are all in agreement or gathered to sing Kumbaya, but having a heart of love toward one another is what God requires of us. In a video that made the social circuit a few years ago, was the brother of Brotham Jean, forgiving former officer Amber Geiger for shooting to death his brother. In a tearful testimony, Brandt told Geiger he forgave her and wanted nothing but the best for her. He even asked the judge for permission to give her a hug. This type of love and forgiveness is missing in our world today by most of us. We can do it, left or right, liberal or conservative, Democrat or Republican, pagan or Christian. It matters not the color of our skin or the nation of our birth. We can still love one another, or at least show love toward one another. For we were all lost until Christ loved us and died for us. Romans 5:8. But God demonstrates his own love for us in this: while we were still sinners, Christ died for us. As one administration comes to an end and another begins, let's try to love one another. As a denomination is preparing to split, let us love one another. As some in our society today seem to want division on both sides, far left and far right, let us love one another. If for no other reason than Jesus told us to do so. Just something for us to think about today as we go on our way. Thank you, dear listeners. God bless.